Hello, my name is LoG, and welcome to the final part of this Notey Note Riff power-up. We're going to go over the riff one more time to make sure we have all of the connections smooth before we start the track, so let's get on to this short run-through. Okay, before we start this final track where we play the whole thing, the track's going to run 70 to 110 BPM. Just want to make sure that everyone is on the same page in regards to how things connect. So remember, it's part 1, into part 2, back into part 1, and then into part 3, and then you start the whole thing over again. So let me play all of that real fast. Part 1. That's part 2. This is part 1. Now, this is the difference, right? When we're going from part 2 back to part 1, like right in the middle of this riff, we do not play this and then continue. We play this, right? We're sliding back from the 3rd of G into G, and then the rest of the part is exactly the same as it would start. So just keep that in mind as you're stringing everything together. So again, part 2. Now we're in part 1 right there. Just that first note is different. Instead of the G, it's the B. Everything else is the same. Into part 3, the little fingering change right there to set up this note, because that's the finger we need to use to play this part. Right, that little F sharp. Now after we hit this F sharp and slide back in, bam, we're right back to the normal part, right back to the beginning. We just repeat until the track is over, or until we're sick of the part. So another thing to do keep in mind when you are running this, keep in mind all of those jumps and the technical stuff, especially at that 3rd part where you're doing a lot of big jumping around with picking fingers, this thing, like that. Like that. That whole passage is pick, middle finger, ring, pick, ring. So you're really jumping around quite a bit when you're spelling out those chords like that. So do keep that in mind. Make sure this whole part is smooth. Make sure you've got all the parts memorized. And now let's get on to this final track. Again, 70 to 110. that does it for this Notey Note riff power-up. I think these types of ideas where you're playing riffs and spelling out chord progressions at the same time are very valuable to get used to, because it'll just help your knowledge of the fretboard, it'll help your knowledge of how chords are put together, and you can really be a lot more free when you have direction when you're trying to create riffs like this. It's very easy to start to come up with a riff that's very random note sounding, but if you always follow the guideline of the notes of the chord progression, you can play a bunch of jumpy ideas, but it'll always spell out the progression. Because of that, it'll always sound like it's following the music and it's not super random. If you enjoyed this type of instructional material, feel free to check out my Patreon at the link below, and I'll see you guys in the next one.